Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. This is our first session of the E.D.G.E workshops that we have. If any of you have been to Dress for Success, we typically do E.D.G.E in person. It's always on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. It's usually 2 hours long when we're in person, and we have speakers such as Barb that kind of come in and they teach a specific topic. We do breakfast and things of that nature, but due to COVID, we're unable to meet in person at this time. So I feel that the best way to kind of go about doing this has been virtual sessions. Carmen and I talked just a few minutes ago, as you guys heard. We used to do Workshop Wednesday, and we did that for 6 weeks. It was every Wednesday at 1 o'clock, where we had a different topic that we kind of talked about. Those topics were designed about around the things that are going on with COVID. So we talked about virtual interviews. We talked about how to manage stress, how to do a phone interview, resume, things of that nature. And that went off pretty well. We had about 15 people on the call every single week. It was a really good turnout and things of that nature. So that came to an end last week, and we started E.D.G.E this week. E.D.G.E from here on out will be every Tuesday and Wednesday from 10 in the morning to 11. It'll be a Zoom call just like this. I'll put it in the chat if you guys are interested in signing up for other topics and seeing kind of what is coming up next. Next week will be our first week of having 2 sessions. We'll have navigating the hiring process and SMART goals. So if that interests you in signing up, you're more than welcome to do that. We also have a free platform called Next Jobs that you're able to sign up for, and that allows you to use some tools at your own pace. It helps you step-by-step make a resume, step-by-step do an elevator speech. There's videos on there that you can watch, things of that nature. There's a lot of cool things. So that'll be in the email that you'll get from Liz after this. Liz will email the PowerPoint out, so if anybody wants to have that, you're more than welcome to look at that afterwards. And then I think the last thing that I have is that we record these because we do put them on our YouTube channel for anyone who's missed them, or if you want to go back over and look at the information or hear the information again, you're more than welcome to do that. That'll also be sent out in the email just so you kind of have access to that. It usually takes me a day or two to get them up on our YouTube channel because it does take a couple minutes to get it off my computer and download to there, but it will be on there by Friday at the latest. Does anybody have any questions before we start? All right, cool. Well, Barb, you can go ahead and start.
Hi, thanks, Tiffany. I appreciate the the update on where we are on workshops and things. I'm really glad to be here today. I'm excited to work with Dress for Success. Just started about last year, maybe a year and a half ago, volunteering in the office. Met some really great goals. So I really just appreciate being here. I have a kind of career in human resources over the years. I started out teaching school and then moved into human resources. Did a lot of organizational design and development, but training in OD was really my favorite part of human resources. I worked in healthcare. I also worked in manufacturing, and just retired a few years ago. So I'm working with a charter school here in Indianapolis, volunteering my time with Adelante, which is a founding organization to help Emma Donnan, an innovation school, rebuild. I'm also working with a foundation that focuses on youth trauma education in sports and athletics, and then Dress for Success. Grew up in Speedway, Indiana, so I'm an Indianapolis girl and a West Sider, mom of 3. And during this COVID, we had my daughter and her husband move in with us from New York, and they've just had a brand new baby. So we have a week-old now with us. That's pretty exciting. So a lot of changes happening around this house. So we want to talk about conflict today, and I think this environment is a great kind of petri dish for conflict, even if around the people that we love here. We went from 2, my husband and I, and then my daughter moved in, and then my stepdaughter and her husband and baby. So we went from 2 to 6 within just a few days. So there have been a lot of challenges, and I know some of the things that typically wouldn't bother me, like refrigerator and making the bed and sharing television and just being in each other's space, sometimes has created conflict. So I think today really it's a discussion about what is conflict and how we see that it's a part of everyday life, and understanding our modes and how we personally typically handle conflict, and then using our modes and some key behaviors for awareness to help us get through them so that we can maintain relationships and kind of move on to the next steps. We have an exercise. The goal really today is to get you guys to participate. I know that might not be as easy in this environment. It isn't person to person, but I do think learning from each other is an important part of coming together as a team. So my hope is you guys feel really comfortable and confident to jump in and participate and really leverage the learning in the workshop today. So kind of that's my speech. I'm really glad to be here once again. And yeah, please feel free to jump in and ask questions. And if I fumble through my slides, it's because it's my first time as well. So we're all in this together. So the agenda for today is really to talk about what is conflict. It's such a normal part of life. There are so many tensions in our life that we deal with conflict routinely. And I think just having a lens of what is conflict and be aware of when it pops up in our life allows us to be more educated and more intentional about our approach to conflict and getting the results that we want and the results that others want that we're in a relationship with. So we'll talk about, I like to keep things simple. I think sometimes we complicate things, but when I keep things simple, I can remember them and then I can apply those skills in areas sometimes that pop up that come in as a surprise, and conflict is one of those. All of a sudden, sometimes we're in a conflict situation and we're surprised that we've gotten there so quickly. So knowing what conflict is, really 4 steps to resolving conflict, some key behaviors. How do we respond? How do we center ourselves and stay in control when emotions get high in conflict? We'll talk about that as well, and some key things that we can do to help us get through those that may not naturally come to us when we're in a high emotion state. And then I've got an exercise that I think we can all relate to in terms of looking for a job and being offered a job and how we might negotiate in that situation. And I'm also open to people giving us examples of conflict maybe you've been in that just can't seem to get through, or it seems to be, because sometimes that happens, we get into patterns. So, all right. There's 3 definitions I really want to talk about as kind of the platform and the foundation for the workshop today. One is just conflict. It's a disagreement with another person or a group of people. So conflict, there's got to be 2. It's never just one. There's at least 2 or more. It's a disagreement. It's not agreeing. We're not aligned. We are not a definite decision. It's either a yes or a no. So we're going to work to a compromise resolution today. And the third is really a conflict resolution is a way for people to find a peaceful solution to a disagreement. So none of that is new to any of you, I'm sure. So can we talk about conflict for a minute? Anyone in the group talk to me about how they view conflict? Is conflict good? Is conflict bad? Is it natural? Kind of give me your opinion about conflict. Are we afraid of it? How do we deal with conflict? Or give me some input on what conflict is to you. Can someone share?
This is Carmen. That's an excellent question. And thanks again for this really great, insightful workshop, because I've never had conflict in a workshop, but it's so vital. I learned in a class not too long ago that conflict should be viewed as a positive because it can bring out just new opportunities or new solutions.
Right. Opportunity is a great word, Carmen. It is an opportunity. Why don't we always see it as an opportunity, do you think?
Well, before I had that previous training, I saw it or I felt it as a negative, as though I was doing something wrong or I didn't think about it the right way, kind of like maybe I didn't have all the answers that I thought I did.
Okay. That's a really good point. Bringing the word feelings in, many times, all times, I would say conflict brings up feelings, either positive or negative feelings. Like you said, I was wrong. Maybe they are wrong. We start to blame ourselves or others about the tension we're having. And getting to the root of that tension is really how we get to solutions. So many times we label ourselves or the other as wrong, or they don't understand. If only this existed, if only they would do this. Many times it's our response to that. It's the lens we use that this is not an opportunity, but this is negative instead of positive. That's a great comment. Are there other folks on the call today? I guess not. Is Carmen the only one on the call?
No, I'm also on the call as well.
Okay, and who's this?
This is Trencia.
Oh, Trancia. What do you think about conflict in general? How do you feel about conflict, or what rises up in you when conflict occurs?
Well, I think it is a disagreement, and I have always been the type to avoid conflict at all costs. Unfortunately, it's something that is inevitable, as I've learned over past times. It's just for me, I just would like to see ways on how to address it in more healthy ways,
Okay.
because it's something that I know I'm going to always run into, because not everybody was brought up the same way as I was. And so I know that's going to be something I'm going to always run into regardless of what environment I'm in. So, I mean, conflict is one of those things I'm just going to always, run up against. And so if I'm going to always, have that in my life, I might as well find a healthy way to address that with someone. So that's how I see it now. But back in the day, I avoided it at all costs. But that has, not worked in my favor in the past.
Well, yeah, those are great comments. I think we have natural modes and how we deal with conflict, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But avoiding conflict is clearly one natural approach to conflict, is just walking away from it, not dealing with issues that could easily be resolved if we felt confident enough to put just some of the facts on the table. I also liked your word of healthy, utilizing a healthy way where you still feel whole and the other party still feels good as well. So how can you have what we would call a constructive conversation around the conflict that looks at both sides, that both parties walk away and feel healthy or feel that they've been heard? So great comments. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. So if you break conflict down into 4 steps about how to approach it, I've done a lot of research and work around conflict. And like I said, I like to keep things simple. So if I think about the 4 steps, it's really the what, the why, and the how. As I think about it, it's the first step is, let's be clear about what each side wants. And I call that unpacking the issues, or really taking a look at what I want. And we'll go through the exercise and we'll really break it down, because sometimes we want things, but we don't need things. So sometimes we come at a conflict, what is that it's my way or the highway. If only they could understand what I needed, then we could resolve this. But to really not avoid conflict and to come out with a positive solution, you have to think about both sides. I call it kind of bifocal listening and bifocal approach. There are 2 sides. So if you go into conflict and it's my way or the highway, you're not going to get to resolution. So really it's the what. The second is the why, and that's where kind of the skill of empathy can come into play. You know, being kind to yourself is important too in conflict. I heard Carmen say she feels like she's always wrong when conflict comes up. And so I encourage you to really think through about your own why, your own needs. What do I need and why? Or is this really not a need, but just a way to control or just a way to get back? Because sometimes in conflict, we can become not our best selves, and we can attach to outcomes that are really only about our need to show, our need to get our way. So the second step really encourages each one of us in conflict to really personally evaluate our whys and take some time to think about, put ourselves in the other person's shoes. What are they going through? You know, what are their needs? When I think about this situation now, like I said, even in my home, we've got our family from New York, and they're here in Indianapolis. And they're stressed about being in a new environment, stressed about having a baby. So sometimes we don't always show up with our best, most patient selves. So it's important sometimes that we don't take our wants and turn them into uncompromising needs. So that's the other piece. And then figure out, like I said, the why and what are must-haves. What are those things that we cannot compromise on? Because it's also important not to just avoid or not give in and not receive what you need to receive in the situation. And the same with the other party. The other party, asking them to state what are their key needs, not just wants, but needs. And that really allows you to integrate the conversation so it's two ways. It's become more of a give and take. And we're really focusing on the mode today of coming to yes, which is a compromising mode. And we'll talk about other modes, but our focus today is on that compromise. Does that make sense? Any comments or questions about the 4 key steps? No. Okay, I'll move on. Let's see, let me look at my notes. I think we're good there. We'll go on to the next one. I just found some quotes that I think were really kind of inspiring. A willingness to trust and openly listen to alternative ideas and views is essential for collaboration to be successful. That just really states that you have to extend trust to the other. If you become in conflict with another individual that you don't trust, that makes it even more difficult. But I even would ask you to think about, why is it you don't trust them? Have they exhibited behaviors? Have they made promises that they've not kept in the past? Just test your willingness and openness to extend trust. Another part of conflict is sharing. I'm not sure you're listening to me, or I'm not sure you understand. We'll get into that as well, but I think that is an element of trusting, is trying to just extend some trust through vulnerability and being open about your needs. So that really starts the two-way conversation. Sometimes, and many times, when you're better equipped at conflict or the other, you have to take the leadership role. And once you start modeling the listening and the sharing with vulnerability, you can see other people come around and soften as well. So I just wanted to share that quote with you about trust and opening to listen. Okay, let's talk about the first step, being clear about what each side wants. If you'll look at the 4 steps on the left, we'll walk through these in an exercise, but it's pretty common state. State what each side wants. So we'll kind of have an exercise and take that exercise apart. And then we'll compare for matching scope. Are we even on the same page? Are we even talking about the same issue? I don't know about you, but sometimes I get in situations, I'm like, we're not even really we're talking past each other. So getting clear about the scope of the issue, and then really coming up with, oh, I see we agree about this. You want this, I see that as important. And then going to, well, here's the elements of the places where we disagree. And then on the right-hand side, these are those key behaviors that really allow you to be in a conflict situation that's emotional, that can allow you to derail, the situation can derail very easily. If you follow these key behaviors, you can keep it intact. You can keep your emotions bundled in a way that are productive, that don't allow the conversation to get out of control. So the first one is be specific. We really talk about using facts in a conflict situation, not going to motion or not moving to blame or saying things like you always or I always, using universal statements. This never works out. It always turns out this way. I can't ever trust you. But being specific about the situation at hand. One of the situations we've had in here is we've got 6 people or 5 people in the kitchen all the time cooking, you know, and someone says, well, I wanted to use that knife, and you use that knife, or why do you eat all the cheese is gone, or this is gone. So we had to get to recipes and what we're going to eat and when. So we didn't get into the refrigerator and all the cheese was gone when we were going to make, cheese quesadillas. So we had to really get really specific about what the issues were. And then be brief. Sometimes we can, become a bag of wind and we really feel better getting things off our chest. Being brief has a much better opportunity to be heard by the others. So we can use I statements. I feel when you do this, here's how I feel, and leave it at that. Being brief does help the other side listen to you. So you want to accommodate their listening by being specific and brief. The other area is really being fair. And that's that mindset of what do they need? Coming with an empathetic mindset and not just digging in because you want to win. It is about thinking about both parties, what's fair for them and what's fair for me. And the other key behavior is being positive. It's really easy in conflict situations to get negative about yourself. I heard Carmen say, I feel like I'm wrong. So we're in conflict situations. We will second guess ourselves. What did I do wrong? Why is it always me? Gosh, if only I should have done this, only I should have done that. And then we avoid, walk away, or we could start to blame the others. So really taking a step back often to try to say, gosh, how do I stay positive? How do I think about next steps? What could this really look like if we worked through this conflict? How could we be better partners if we work through this conflict? So thinking about a positive outcome and coming in with a positive attitude, even saying things like, boy, this is a tough conversation, but I think it's really important that we work together to solve this. Being that leader with a positive attitude can make a huge difference to take emotions from what I call, over the top to very manageable. Using positive words. I hear you, I understand, that makes sense. Or even saying, gosh, I don't understand, but I'm willing to listen. That's not my position, but I'm willing to compromise. So as you go through the steps of kind of unpacking the conflict, and you come to it with some key behaviors that you want to use, and maybe you just pick 1 or 2 of these key behaviors. If you have a tendency to not be brief, but to really take on an aggressive approach, just think about being brief when you go into a conversation. Or if you have the tendency to get negative, either about yourself or about others, or we'll never solve this, this is always going to be the same, go into a conversation to say, gosh, if I could only do one thing, if I could be positive, this is really important to me. Many times that can shift the whole environment of a conflict situation. Are there any comments or steps around that?
I like your comment about being brief.
Okay.
That can be very, very helpful to
Sorry.
me.
Well, there you go. Okay. I apologize. Okay, Carmen, go ahead.
I liked your comment about being brief so that you have more possibility of being heard by the person.
Mm-hmm.
And something that comes to mind, especially during this time that we're all going through, is for me, keeping my focus on valuing the other person and bringing value to them. I don't know the situation that maybe is pressuring them, like you said about your new household structure, but some of the conflict that in a situation we might be trying to resolve could just be coming from the pressure that other people are under. So valuing people.
Absolutely. That is a great comment. And that is that stretching yourself beyond just you and considering what is happening with the other. And I like the word focus and value as well. Focus is difficult in high emotion situations. Sometimes we can say things we don't want to say. We feel things that are just patterns of feeling versus clarifying our thoughts and thinking through, which is a combination of focus and what do I really value. So those are great, valuable comments, Carmen. And I do think we have an opportunity in this environment of stress and unknowns to really be more intentional about our behaviors and our approach. Okay, great. So sorry about that phone call. Huh? All right, so let's go to the next slide. So here's an exercise. Hope you can see this here. This is just an exercise. I thought it might be interesting to walk through an exercise to see how we might approach it from differing perspectives. So I'll read it and then we can talk about the questions. So you interview for a full-time office clerk position in downtown Indianapolis, making $15 an hour, working Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 with an hour lunch. The company comes back and offers you a position, but it is a warehouse clerk. So it's a clerk, but it's in a warehouse and it's near the airport. It's not downtown, working 36 hours a week for $17 an hour. But your work schedule is Tuesday through Saturday, 7:30 to 3:30 with a half an hour lunch. All right, so we've got, you went in for an interview. The company did offer you a job, but it was not the same position. The pay, the hours, and the location were different. So we have an opportunity to try to work through this difference. So let's compare the two positions. What do we see about the two positions here? Do we need more information? How do they agree with each other? How do they disagree? And let's state the conflict to be resolved. Does anyone want to share?
Well, one's making more money than the other, but they're the
Right,
same position, different hours and different locations. So
right.
personally, I have to come up with what are my priorities and maybe which one meets the goals or the priority that I have the most.
Right. So on one side, if you've received the offer, you have to determine, like you said, Carmen, the location. Is that location viable for you? What about the pay? What about the hours? What about the setting?
So the hours will be different because you might want to work Monday through Friday instead of Saturday and Sunday.
Okay,
And the pay might be better because you might want a little bit more money.
right,
And the setting, it wouldn't be downtown. You wouldn't have dressed up as being in a warehouse. You might not want to work in a warehouse.
right.
So pretty much doing the same job basically, I guess, but it's just more money in a different area.
Right. So when we think about the positives, we see there's a different location, different pay, different hours, and different environment. What are some of the positives? What are some of the areas that they agree upon?
Like
The
being a
role.
clerk,
Like, excuse you?
like still been working as a clerk, you're still
Right.
clerk position.
Yeah, so you still have a clerk position.
I guess the money will be a good positive because it's more money. Instead of
Yeah, and
the one positive, you have a half an hour lunch instead of our lunch. Maybe, I mean, some people don't take an hour to eat lunch. Some people do, depending on how
right,
far, whether you bring in lunch or not.
right. So you could see some positives there. They do want you to work for the company. I mean, that's positive. They interviewed you. They have really positive view of you. Believe that you can contribute to the organization and want you a part of the team. So that's huge. I mean, you start with a lot of positives there, just that they offered you the position. Like you said, Tammy, the pay, if you analyze the pay from 36 hours to the 40 hours, it's a couple $100 difference. It's really not that huge a difference, and you could get overtime pay in one and not the other. So we don't know that, right? So that might be a question: is there overtime pay? Um, Also, the half an hour lunch could be a positive, or you may need an hour lunch. I don't know. We don't know yet. Um, do you need any more information to compare those? Would there be any other questions that you might ask in this situation if you were offered the warehouse position when you interviewed for the office position?
There might be some things that a person could be more interested in working in the office setting than the warehouse setting, and then they may have some goals. It's possible that the warehouse position, or I'm sorry, the warehouse setting puts them more in position for what they want their next role to be.
Hmm? That's true. Yeah. So you may say, I really enjoy working in a warehouse. I may get more activity, get more steps in if I'm trying to get more exercise. Um, and maybe I'll get to wear my tennis shoes and jeans instead of more office attire. Um, I do have transportation or I don't have transportation. That is a big issue, right? Um, and whether those working hours can accommodate family schedules and things like that. So there might be some more information you need to gather. But I think you guys have done a good job of saying there are things that we agree upon and there are things that are different. So we've unpacked those two. So the conflict to be resolved here, I believe, as you guys have stated, is really is the location viable for the recipient of the offer? How is the pay? Is that something that we can handle? Not knowing whether we've got overtime or not. And then the work hours. Can we accommodate those work hours into our lifestyle? And then the warehouse setting versus the office setting. So those are the pieces that need to be resolved. There could be more questions as well, like benefits. Do you have benefits, vacation, health and welfare benefits, those sorts of things too. Okay, great. Let's go to the next one. The next step is really about courage, what it takes to stand up and speak. I think I heard some of you say that I avoid all conflict. I'm an avoider too. But it takes some level of assertiveness to stand up and speak for yourself. And courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen. So we're going to try that, these next steps here. Okay, so the next step, we talked about the what. Now we're going to talk about the why. If you go back to the company and say, boy, I really appreciate the offer. However, we need to be prepared to say the why. Why are we stating our position? What's important to us? So be honest about your reasons, the why. Listen to the other side and think of good reasons that the other side may have. How are your reasons similar and how are your reasons different? And once again, we're going to be specific, be brief, be fair, and be positive. Okay, let me move on here. So this is, the next step is the why is seeking to understand both sides. Okay. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Okay, it's the same exercise here. Let's just take a look at the blue position, which is you. What are some good reasons for the blues position? Why would you have applied for this job?
I think having the hour lunch versus the half hour could be attractive.
Okay.
And then it's a clerical position. So if you're used to working fast food or in warehouses, it would be a change of pace for you.
Okay. Great. So there could be a lot of positives, working downtown, the hours, and the clerical position. What if your friend says, because sometimes we can get into conflict and we can hear the voices of others. Your friend says, typical company, always trying to cheat the working woman, nothing but greedy. Is this a fair statement of motive for the green side? Why or why not?
Well, your friend's comments could actually be rooted in a bad experience that person had. That doesn't necessarily have anything to do with my current situation and this particular company.
Right. So that's just an example where we can have old stories in our head or views that really don't allow us to see fairly the new situation. So that's just examples. Sometimes I think we can listen to those old negative voices or negative voices of people that we trust or associate with. So that's one of those behaviors that we really have to limit. The next question is, why may be some good reasons for the green position? Why would the company may have offered you a different position? They obviously want you on board, but offered you a different position. What might be some reasons?
They may feel like you are a perfect fit for that environment or the opportunities that are available at the warehouse. You know, maybe they see you as being great for whatever the next move is in that warehouse role.
Right. They may see you fitting into that team or that environment very well. They may not have opens in the office anymore. You know? What might you say if you really wanted the office position, but you were willing and you could accommodate the hours and the travel to the warehouse position? What might you say to the company if you could take the green position, but we're really hoping for the blue?
You can ask them if a position come open in the office, is it when you can transfer to the office downtown?
Yeah, perfect. I mean, to come in agreement, I really like this organization. I really like the work you do. I'd like this to be my long-term job. This may cause me some hardship in travel, but I would love to be considered for any future office downtown positions. I can see that where my career path could be. Yeah, okay, so you guys are getting the gist of it here. Step 3, what can I give or what can I not give? In a conflict, being willing to change allows you to move from point of view to viewing a point. A higher, more expansive place from which you can see both sides. Okay, this next exercise is the must-haves. Number 1 is really, want is something that you desire but can do without. Need is something that you cannot do without. Your bottom line is what you need. Your compromise is what you can give. Okay, and the same is true for the other side. Let's go to this exercise real quick. It's the same exercise. In these steps, it says your first grader gets off the bus at 4 on weekdays and there's no one to care for her except you. Is your 4 p.m. quitting time request, a need, or a want?
I would say it's a need.
Yeah, I would say that's a need. It's a must-have for you. You cannot compromise on that. Let's say you're not free to work on Saturdays because you like to visit your sister on Saturdays. Is your request for a Monday through Friday schedule a need or a want?
It's a want.
It's a want.
Okay. What circumstance would make your request to a work location downtown a need or a want?
If you don't have a car or a way of getting to work, you catch the bus and be closer, easier for you to get to work.
Right. Yeah. So you guys are good. Oh, go ahead.
That's it.
Yeah, I mean, you just may not be able to get to the location downtown, or it may be a hardship. You may have a ride. You may not be able to get downtown but 3 or 4 days a week because of you have to share a car. So really just unpacking needs versus wants so that you can get through to a compromise. And then I think you guys have done a good job already about what are the company's needs or wants. They may not have an opening. They may really have expanded their warehouse and need new talent there, but they may hear and understand that you want the office position, and that could be something that you go for in the future. Okay, so you guys done a good job there. In the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. I think this is what you said exactly, Carmen. Let's talk about path for solution. And I do want to talk a bit about the different modes of conflict resolution here. Some of the paths to solution are express respect for your opponent's position, really just stating that. Exchange your wants fairly. Be prepared to compromise to your bottom line. That's your needs. And focus on win-win for the compromise. And make this about a long-term relationship, not just a transaction, if that makes sense. Let's talk a minute about, we focused really in this exercise today about compromise, but the mode of coming to solution through compromise. There are a couple other modes that, had we been in person, we would have done an assessment to see what our natural modes are. Like I said, my mode is to avoid at all costs and just hoping that the conflict will go away. That avoiding mode really works on a low assertive. You do not assert your needs, and a low cooperation. So there are 2 sides to every conflict situation. One is about asserting, and the other is about compromise. So cooperation, excuse me. So avoiding is a low assertion of your needs and low cooperation. So you don't engage in requiring the other party to cooperate because you're not even there. And you don't even put your needs on the table, and you don't invite the other to put their needs on the table. So that's avoiding, okay? What we've worked on today is compromising, which is a moderate level of assertiveness, really exploring needs and wants and putting only your needs, not just your wants, on the table, as well as moderate cooperation, being clear with the company about what they can give up or what they can move towards. Okay, so compromise is about moving towards with both moderate assertiveness and moderate cooperation. The other one is called competing, and that's really win at all costs, which is high assertiveness and low cooperation. So when you're all about winning at all cost, you are very low in cooperation and very high in the assertive approach to resolution. And then there's collaborating, which is also a win-win like compromise, but it's really high assertive and high cooperation. So high assertive means you're very clear about what your needs are and your wants are, and you're willing to listen to the needs and the wants of others. And that's really a collaborative approach. So any comments about how we utilize the real elements of assertiveness and cooperation in conflict resolution?
Those are really great points that you just shared, and I don't see them in your notes on the screen.
You
Can
know,
you tell me where those are coming from, your research? I'd like to read more about those.
yeah, this is from Thomas Kilman, and I can send those. You know, as I prepared this, thinking this is an hour long, I thought we'd have more conversation. So I didn't include these, but I will. I'm not sure, Tiffany, how I can include that in the final slide, but I'll do that.
Thank you.
And like I said, I think understanding your primary mode will also help you confront conflict in a more productive and healthy way. If you're an avoider, what you're doing is not putting yourself in the picture. You're also not putting the other party in the picture. If you're competing, you're only putting yourself in the picture. If you're collaborating, you're open to a very healthy, robust dialogue. And you really have to manage those key behaviors by being fair, being positive, being specific, and being brief. That is a collaborative approach, takes a lot of effort on both sides. And then accommodating is really being a wallflower, walking away, not getting any of your needs met. And that is really an avoiding approach as well. You're giving in, but you're giving in to the others. Avoiding is not dealing with it at all. Okay, it's really low assertion and low cooperation. So I will put those on the slides.
Thank you so much, Barbara. That comes to mind for me as such a high point because in one of the types of interviews that I've heard about, sometimes people are put in groups and the employer may actually be looking for how well the person is able to work together in a team.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. You do have group interviews, well, and that is a competency, working well within a team in any environment. I don't know any place anymore where you just work alone. So working together and how you manage conflict and even being aware of how you manage. I mean, many times in an interview, they'll ask you, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And, you know, being honest about, well, I don't like conflict. You know, I tend to really avoid conflict, but I'm working very hard to be much better at compromising or collaborating in conflict. Being confident to state my position, being patient in listening to the others. And let me give you an example of how I've done that. That's great. Okay, so I will put those on the slides. Okay, that's next. I think we may have done this enough of the exercise, but I guess the question's here. When you think about why do you respect the employer? Is this a relationship you want to keep? Is compromise a sign of weakness or strength? What do you guys think? What is compromise? Is that a sign of weakness or strength?
strength.
Definitely a strength.
I agree. And I think we've talked about a win-win scenario here. The other question is, whenever an outcome of conflict arises, one of the questions is, how do you want to be perceived? How would you like to be perceived at the end of a conflict? What's important to you? It goes back to the discussion of values.
I think walking away knowing that your concerns were voiced and heard, even though that everything you may have said may not be totally agreed upon, but that the other party can respect the questions or concerns that you had.
Yeah. Just being fair. That's open. I would like to deal with that person again. I'm willing to put myself in a situation with that person again. I trust that person. Yeah. The way you show up is really important. Great comments. So really, successful conflict resolution boils down to these 6 things. It is having respect for yourself, respect for the others, being reasonable. It goes back to the needs and the wants, and fairness, an open-minded approach. Compromise is really giving and taking, and then looking for a solution that can benefit both parties. And then having a relationship that's intact even after you've explored those differences. So those are really the keys to success. Love this quote by Maya Angelou. People will forget what you said, they will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. So that's up to us. So any other comments or questions? And I will put that last slide together for you that outlines the different modes of conflict.
Great workshop. Thank you so much.
Carmen, thanks, Sammy. All right.
Thank you, Barb. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I will have Liz wait to send out the slides until Barb puts that stuff on there you guys have asked for. So you'll get that. It just won't be immediately after this. I'll wait to get that from Barb. And then also in the email, you'll have the link for YouTube in case you want to share this with someone else or you want to go back and look at it later on. And then we also will send out a survey if you guys don't mind to take a couple seconds to answer the survey, give us your feedbacks on what you thought today. You are anonymous for that, but that survey does allow us to continue to get grants and provide workshops like this that are free for the women of Indianapolis or women in general. So if you don't mind doing that, just take a couple seconds. That would be great. If you have any questions, though, let me know. And then next week's topic for Tuesday is SMART goals. So if you'd like to join that, that'll be in the email as well. Does anybody have any questions?
Tiffany, is the Tuesday and Wednesday workshop always the same topic, or is it 2 different topics?
Great question. It's 2 different topics. Tuesday will be SMART goals. Wednesday will be navigating the hiring process. And then the following week will be another 2 different topics on Tuesday and Wednesday as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.